I am going to discuss about how the pension has to be paid to all the Indians who have crossed 60 years of age at par with the central government, state government, public sector undertaking and private sector undertaking and EPF contributories. In the year 1957, the hallmark for the introduction of the pension scheme, including the railways, adopted. From 16/11/1957, the pension rule was enacted and came into force. In fact, persons who were on rolls in central government as on 1/4/1957 were considered for coming on to the pension scheme, but it was on optional basis. Perhaps persons who were all governed initially under the Provident Fund contributions were allowed to continue if they do not opt for the pension scheme. And later, family pension also was introduced in the year 1963, for which certain norms were followed. Initially, persons who were governed by the Provident Fund scheme till 1956, that is up to 31/3/1957, were allowed to continue as the Provident Fund contributors if they do not come on and switch over to the pension scheme. At that time, there was a necessity that some contributions were made both by the persons who were governed by the pension rule as well as by the Provident Fund rule. The criteria is special contribution to the Provident Fund will be made for the persons who were continued under the CPF beneficiaries, whereas no contribution from the Government of India, only the pension savings as a pension fund as a separate clause from the contributory money what they are depositing only will be paid and no contribution from the government will be made. That was the two criteria. Therefore, persons governed by contributory pension scheme of is different from the persons who are governed by contributory provident fund scheme. Therefore, the provident fund scheme means they will give only based on your savings as a SC2PF, special contribution to the provident fund. Whereas pensioners, there is no such word. Only the amount recovered as a PF will be paid. In addition to that, pension, gratuity, commutation of pension, leave salary, and other benefits as a pensioners. Whereas the same case applicable to the special contribution to the provident fund. Beside that, their own savings as a PF plus leave salary and other benefits were extended. But there was no commutation and there was no pension for the CPF beneficiaries. This was prevalent after 1/4/1957 when the orders were come into effect from 16/11/1957. And after 1963, they introduced the form of family pension. Initially, the background for the introduction of pension itself, person who is receiving the whole lot of money, drinks, dances, celebrates marriage, or construct or they do not construct the houses, they come to the platform on the next day after the retirement. That should be stopped. Therefore, there should be a regular income, assured income till they breathe lost after the retirement was the criteria for the payment of pension. SCTPF people were still at liberty. If the person is capable and if the person is good enough, if the person is maintaining a civil life orderly, they are at liberty either to opt for the pension scheme to come on and or to continue with the CPF beneficiaries as a special contribution to the Provident Fund besides that saving. So it was totally optional. Thereafter, on 16/11/1957, opened a pension. Still, many people have not opted for the pension scheme. Initially, they continued as such. Afterwards, slowly, the family pension was also granted because when the employee dies, the family will suffer suddenly. Therefore, not only the employee is entitled for the pension as a continuity of payment till he breathe lost, but also to his wife and their children according to the age and according to the norms as a dependents. So therefore, in 1963 and 64, the pension was made as a liberalized for family pension also. This was effective from 1964, that is, but they insisted from 22nd September 1977, that is, 2 months of gratuity is contributed to the employees and family account. The family will be likely to get the family pension, failing which the employee only is entitled, and thereafter it will stop once he dies and it will not be extended to the family thereafter. That is why after 22nd September 1997 to 1999, it was continued. Thereafter, it was done away with. From 1999, there was no need for contributing any gratuity to come on to the family pension. Therefore, it was called as 1964 as a liberalized family pension. That means without contributing any amount of gratuity to the pension scheme, persons who were originally governed as on 16/11/1957 come on to the family pension scheme also. Then it was going in a long time till 1984. It was not resorted. Persons who retired without contributing to the 2 months gratuity died, and there was no class for extending the benefit to the family pension. Afterwards, in 1984, there was a case came into flood in the Supreme Court, and they decided by the Supreme Court, as the widows protested that after the contribution of 2 months gratuity has been done away with, what is the necessity for stopping family pension in other cases where they have not contributed? Therefore, in 1984, the order was passed, and in the central government, they adopted that irrespective of the fact whether they contributed 2 months gratuity to the pension scheme to extend the family pension or not, all were become entitled for that. Therefore, there was no class. Again, it is made clear that 16/11/57, before 1 year, a person who is selected in the central government, even before he is appointed, if he is declared medically fit, he is eligible for pension as well as family pension. When that being the case, why not a common citizen who has rendered either in the Provident Fund scheme or in the pension scheme or as a citizen in the world in India, born and worked for 80 years, should not be given the pension? That is why my appeal with folded hands to the President, the Prime Minister of India, the members of the Rajya Sabha and members of the Lok Sabha, and all legislative assembly members and the MLCs of all the states and the union territory, that they must also extend the pension to the all citizens who have crossed 60 years of age, either male or female, and who do not have any income as a destitute, they are in the road, they should be protected. I appeal on behalf of them as the president or the secretary of all 145 crores of people, as a brother or a sister or a father.